single strike Pokemon or a rapid strike Pokemon, it does attack for less energy cards. So it could be a potential to put some pressure in. But here we go. We're getting things started. And I mean, you talked about this before, but all Arceus needs to get set up is an Arceus down in energy. And as long as it's got V-Star next turn, it's got some good potential.
Exactly. Probably not the most exciting turn one here from Ryan. Getting an attachment for a turn, again, that's all you need. Choice Belt attached onto the Arceus. It does threaten the Inteleon this next turn here. As we pass over to Jacob, let's see what they have cooking.
Okay, so you talked about the Arceus, of course, the Duraludon, being very strong against these Rapid Strike Pokemon, but of course there is that Rapid Strike Urshifu, which does hit this Arceus V-Star for double damage. So I'll be really interested to see what happens in both of these, but oh boy, this hand is terrible. There is nothing going on here. Drapion, a couple of energy cards, a Roxanne you can't play. Yeah. Nothing going on at all here for Jacob.
He does get an attachment for a turn. Roxanne could prove useful after you lose a couple of Pokemon, but you don't want to be in that spot. That's not the first supporter you want to see for sure, as we see Velocity being played right now. Howlucha, very interesting card. Just putting damage there onto the Inteleon. Actually, very smart there, retreating the Inteleon, keeping it safe, because right now the Urshifu should at least be able to take a hit. Arceus V-Star maxes out at 210, unless, of course, that one damage on the Inteleon suddenly moves to the active, which might be possible.
Well, there's a Radiant Pokemon that could potentially move it around, and it feels so out of place, but talk to me a little bit about that, Wancho. Radiant Alakazam seeing play in these Arceus decks.
Exactly, Radiant Alakazam. It's able to move up to 2 damage counters from one Pokemon to another. I think the logic with that card here is because, you know, Arceus, V-Star, Duraludon, Umbreon, they're actually doing more than enough to take knockouts, right? 180, 220, those are big numbers. If you're hitting into V-Stars, for example, V-Maxes, you're already two-shotting them, right? So might as well make use of that damage and move it over. But it also works out here where you're able to put in so much pressure just on your second turn, right? You're able to do 220 damage. There it is. Radiant Alakazam should be able to move the damage. Choice Belt, again, and it's so easy to set up thanks to the Starbirth.
Absolutely. That 10 damage coming in clutch. Painful Spoon's ability on that Alakazam. Able to take out what is probably the biggest threat to this active Arceus V-Star. There it is, that Painful Spoon's Alakazam sitting there on the bench. It's almighty shining glory, and the Arceus V-Star also being able to use Starbirth can move the 10 damage counter from this benched Inteleon to this active, and like you said, perfect math, 210 more. Arceus V-Star, a big first turn here for Ryan, taking the knockout, taking 2 prizes, and also getting this Duraludon that was found off of the Starbirth into play and powered up.
Absolutely powerful play here by Ryan. Again, not only taking a knockout on the Urshifu VMAX, which in my opinion is the biggest threat here to your board at the moment anyway, because again, Arceus V-Star is weak to fighting, and again, we know Jacob doesn't have much to work with. Yes, there's an Inteleon with an energy attachment. That's something of note. Getting the energy on the Inteleon means you're able to attack with the Inteleon VMAX. You're not depending on those rapid strike energies, but we have a ways to go.
And this top deck is not looking good at all. You've got access to this Drapion, which right now is attacking for 2 energy less, but it's still not enough to get anything going. I mean, you could bench this Inteleon, but
I don't even see a VMAX here.
The problem is your opponent's going to get a guaranteed knockout on whatever you bench, and it's just going to get passed over. And to start things off, 3 turns in, Ryan's going to be going down to 2 prize cards.
Yes, this Arceus just putting in a lot of work. Choice Belt, just such a difference maker here. Again, 210 damage. Inteleon V only has 200. Well, let's look at the brighter side here. Jacob can use their Roxanne now in a bit.
Look at that, Lumineon using Luminous Sign to grab a supporter card we very rarely see. Adventurer's Discovery, grabbing 3 V Pokemon out of the board. And can grab the Duraludon, the Umbreon for next turn, and 1 more card to thin the deck out. And I'm sure Ryan will be going right back in with this Trinity Nova. An excellent start so far, showing off the power of this deck. It's simple, as we've said. The game plan is simple. It's not a lot of complicated things you're doing. But man, it works.
Exactly. I was actually looking at some Arc Duralists, and the Adventurer's Discovery was very interesting to me because not only is it a setup card, it's technically a gust as well, right? That's able to get you your Umbreon VMAX, which essentially could gust you another card, but right now you don't really need to gust anything. It's 2 very identical Inteleon Vs. Looks like we're going to retreat here into a Duraludon, which could be interesting. Again, Duraludon with the Skyscraper ability means you cannot get hit by Pokemon that have special energy attached. Yeah. Even if you put that special energy in the hand after the attack, technically it's still on. So
yep, can't get hit at all. And I think Ryan was considering maybe retreating, but of course the knockout already online there. Let's make sure that Inteleon goes to Lost Zone, which it does. And there you go, Trinity Nova, 3 more energy putting into play. I want you, from this point, is there any way for... Okay, answer my question for me. Jacob understands. Listen, I can play Roxanne, I can disrupt my opponent, but they've got 3 Pokemon now fully powered up. They've got plenty of time to deal damage to me, and I've got a whole lot of coming back to do. Too much so. That's going to be it. Ryan going up 1-0.
Yeah, very, very quick game. Again, Arceus is putting in the pressure. I personally would have played the Roxanne just to see what hand I would have drawn anyway.
Sure.
But honestly, from that position, could not imagine how to get back. I mean, getting the Inteleon VMAX in play probably would have been nice. That is something that could take a couple of hits. But something of note as well, you know, you're down 2 Inteleon Vs at that point. They were sent to the Lost Zone. You have no more, you have no access to that anymore. So it's literally just that one Inteleon VMAX. And without something like a Cheryl, for example, to heal it, it's tough. It's going to be tough.
Lots of things, of course, as we've talked about. You've got the constant Gust with Dark Signal on the Umbreon VMAX, of course. Skyscraper on the Duraludon. That's a big issue to get through. Jacob's on the back foot here, already down 1-0. Luckily, it was a quick game 1, so there's plenty of time to play 2 more games out. And also will be, I'm pretty certain, going first. Arceus, of course, one of the decks that really doesn't like to go second. It's got a very simple 2-turn plan. But really, I think if there's anything Jacob wants is just the ability to at least play the game out, right? Get a starting hand, draw some cards, and try to get things going.
At least get one supporter. A usable supporter.
Yes, a usable one.
Something they're going to be looking for here is definitely the Urshifu V, because again, Urshifu VMAX definitely hits Arceus V-Star for weakness, which is Orion's ideal start. Yes, it might not be able to hit something like Duraludon later on, but what do we see here?
And this hand is does have a supporter, like we said, but what we didn't specify is to make sure you don't have all of the Pokemon that you don't want to discard in your hand. It's a bunch of stage 1s there. Luckily, we'll be getting a mulligan card.
Well,
maybe
that
some
one
more.
card could matter. That one card could matter.
Could definitely matter for sure. So we will be seeing 7 cards here for Ryan, setting things up. Going first, I mean, even as you're looking to your second turn, I mean, Jake, you have a lot of options. Of course, you've got the G-Max Spiral on the Inteleon VMAX. You've got Gale Thrust on the Urshifu. What are you really looking for in terms of the attacks that you're trying to go for in your second turn of the game?
I think definitely Gale Thrust is going to be key. You want to start putting pressure on that Arceus, maybe knock an Arceus V out before they get access to a V-Star. And you know what, if possible, maybe take, if you can, right, take 4 prizes potentially, since Ryan might have to bench a couple of Arceus Vs, for example, to really set up a Duraludon. And then from there, have to worry about the Duraludon, but we'll get to that bridge when we get there. But it looks like a couple of mulligans here, so drawing 3 cards, essentially, I forget their name, but Tierno, drawing 3
yeah,
for
there
free.
You go.
Why not? Why not?
Listen, I'm always a big fan of anything free, and cards in the Pokemon TCG are no exception to that. So I think more than happy we'll take that. Does finally find a basic Pokemon, but what else is going on in this hand? Plenty of things to work with. More importantly, you see the prize cards here over on the screen for Jacob. 2 Rapid Strike energy, as well as that important card we talked about. One of those Rapid Strike Urshifu in the prize cards.
Exactly. Luckily, though, they do play a 2-2 line of artillery, because I do see the artillery prize there. That is a way to search out your other Rapid Strike energy, so they should have access to it. Hopefully they get access to artillery there, but we'll have to see as we see the other prize cards here for Ryan. Nothing too much, nothing too important there. Volo's a very interesting card. Not quite sure how it's going to matter in this matchup. Potentially maybe heal up or discarding a Duraludon VMAX that's gotten a little bit too beat up, but we'll have to see.
So here we go, game number 2. Did see at least a Nest Ball there drawn for Jacob off of the mulligan, so at least another basic Pokemon can come down. Did have to, I believe, start this Radiant Alakazam. Not really what you want in the active, of course. All of your Pokemon having pivoting power. Does have that 1 copy of the Escape Rope in the hand, so there is the potential to find that card. However,
yeah, I'd have to say Radiant Alakazam has to be the worst start in this deck, right? Not only does it have 2 retreat costs, it's not a Rapid Strike Pokemon. It's kind of hard to retreat. You mentioned it earlier, yeah, just the 2 Escape Rope. They do play 2 Escape Rope. That's the only way to get it out here, unless you want to attach 2 water energies and then retreat.
And this hand is so tough here for Jacob. He's got plenty of cards in hand, does have Professor's Research, but there's way too many resources in this hand that you can't afford to discard. 2 copies of Inteleon VMAX, Octillery, the other copy of the Rapid Strike Urshifu. But no other Pokemon here deciding to grab Remoraid off this Nest Ball instead of Inteleon V.
Ooh, that is tough. I think the thing that concerns me a little bit is the Urshifu VMAX being prized. because he does have one prize, right? He does have one prize, and if he has to get rid of this one, luckily Urshifu V is a pretty good attacker by itself, but it's something we do have to set up as, you know, Adventurous Discovery, a great card. Again, I mentioned it earlier, it could be a potential gust, but it's such a good setup card, especially when almost all your Pokemon are Pokemon Vs, and looks like we're getting just a couple of V-Stars, a V-Star, a V-Max, and a V.
This takes me back to the old days where Bridget was a supporter of choice and all decks surrounded around getting these setup supporter cards like Professor Elm's Lecture and Bridget to get Pokemon. So I'm more than happy to get a little bit of a flashback, grabbing those 2 evolution Pokemon, getting ready for next turn, saying, hey, I realize your deck probably doesn't play very many disruption cards like Judge. I'm sure you've got Roxanne, maybe something later on towards the end of the game, but I should be able to keep this hand for now. Does also have the Umbreon, and of course that crucial double turbo attachment to the Arceus, and as we've said, that's all you need, and it's really going to be on Jacob here, especially in Game 2, facing one more loss to put yourself at a 4-1 record. What can you do here to stay in this game? What can you do to keep pace when there's so much your opponent's throwing at you?
It's going to be tough for sure. I think definitely Octillery grabbing maybe another Pokemon. This might be a hand you just hold. You mentioned it earlier. There's a lot of resources here you don't want to lose. So this might be just find another Pokemon pass. We'll have to see. Again, for Ryan here is in a great spot, though. I mentioned earlier that he might have to bench 2 Arceus Vs just because of the threat of the Urshifu. But because of Jacob's really kind of slow start, getting this 1 Arceus V down with the energy is a pretty safe play.
Yeah, and having deck list information is also important. I think we're at the point now where players kind of understand how this deck is generally built, not playing a lot of disruption cards, not playing a lot of cards like even Boss's Orders in this deck. So the odds of your opponent having both of those, of course, didn't also get the Urshifu V down, so you can't threaten Gale Thrust on the following turn. Rapid Strike Search being utilized to grab that Inteleon V, so that is now in the hand, getting ready for next turn. But, I mean, if we look towards what's in the active spot here, and looking more so at Jacob's list, there is no way to recover this Radiant Alakazam. This is a crucial piece in trying to set up these Yoga Loop plays. Losing that does not feel great.
Exactly. I mean, typically, you want to use Yoga Loop against, like, it's easier to set up definitely against something like Comfey, against Ralts, but when you're staring at VMAX Pokemon, I want to see, if possible, how you would set that up. That'd be really tough. Again, Duraludon VMAX has 330 HP, Arceus Venusaur has 280. The math is a little bit tough there, but we'll have to see as we go into Ryan gets the attachment for turn, gets the Arceus V-Star, which means he has the world here. Let's see what they're going to find.
Starbirth, any 2 cards out of the deck being selected, and it is that Choice Belt right away, which makes me think we could be seeing a Boss's Orders target up this Urshifu. We saw how strong it was Game 1 with Hawlucha to be able to take care of this, and as we've been identifying all game, the Rapid Strike Inteleon VMAX, not very threatening, right? Duraludon walls and takes care of that Pokemon very fine. Even on top of that, it's a 3-hit knockout, right? It's still very difficult, but that Rapid Strike Urshifu can pose a lot of problems being able to deal damage to this Arceus V-Star and take a 1-hit knockout. So there we go. Boss's Orders and Choice Belt, or Switch and Choice Belt being grabbed. Do we see the combination of pieces at this point? There's the Choice Belt. Does have the Duraludon, or Umbreon, actually.
Umbreon, there we go.
There we go. As you said, can play essentially no supporter on top of it. Deciding to not grab a supporter card for turn. Instead, just valuing the switch, or actually played the Colress's Experiment for turn to put the 2 cards in the Lost Zone. And here we go. Turn 2 knockout, taking 2 prize cards, says, hey, listen, if your Urshifu comes up and attacks me, I've got a great response on my bench in this Duraludon VMAX.
Definitely something of note. Again, the Urshifu here, it's interesting to see that they went for the knockout on the Inteleon. Maybe they didn't have access to the Hawluchas, for example, lacking a little damage, but Urshifu, yes, it is a great attacker into Arceus. You hit for weakness, that's great. You take 2 prizes, but from there, what do? We know for a fact Jacob does not play any basic fighting energy. The only way this Urshifu can attack is with the Rapid Strike energies. Duraludon laughs at the face of special energies, as we see a big research here.
So painful. Look at those resources discarded. 2 Inteleon VMAX hitting the discard pile, and again, we've talked about it. There's no way to recover Pokemon, so that leaves you with just 1 Inteleon VMAX left for the entirety of this game.
Exactly. And again, it's something they definitely have to set up because that's the only viable attacker into Duraludon. But right now, this Urshifu is definitely, it's very threatening. 150 damage. If you move into the active, that's a pretty efficient attack for 1 energy. It's not too bad, but you do have to get into active. You need a couple of pieces here. You need your way to switch and the energy. Unfortunately, Octillery can only find you 1 of them, and one of those is the energy for sure.
It's a great piece in this deck. It allows you to, again, find that super powerful Rapid Strike energy card. It provides both water and fighting energy at the same time, and 2 for a single attachment, but only works on those Rapid Strike Pokemon. There is the Tower of Waters that will allow this Octillery to pivot out of this active spot, retreat into the Rapid Strike Urshifu, and there we go. We will be seeing Jacob take the first 2 prize cards for himself of this set. There it is, Gale Thrust knockout, 300 damage to this Arceus because of weakness. And up comes Duraludon, and that is a big skyscraper. It's going to take a lot to knock that thing down.
Definitely, definitely. Something, again, the only way to hit it in Jacob's deck is the Inteleon VMAX. So, but something that could happen potentially is maybe Drapion could attack here. Again, Duraludon, Umbreon. These are single strike Pokemon. You could try and set up a Drapion and then go into a Drapion V-Star. Maybe it could get knocked out by poison potentially. But those are routes you're not usually taking in this matchup. But sometimes you have to think of outside the box when you're in trouble here, as we see an attachment onto the Umbreon. Yeah,
Jacob understanding this Rapid Strike Urshifu is doing practically nothing to this Duraludon, so playing the boss's orders, taking out this powerful support Pokemon in that Octillery with the Rapid Strike Search, going down to 3 prize cards and saying, hey, I've lined myself up perfectly, either a 1 prize and a 2 prize knockout, or I'm just going to take a 3 prize knockout over the course of the game with this Urshifu VMAX on your bench. Now you've got to play risky. Every time a V Pokemon comes down, you've got to be fearful of boss's orders to pick it off.
Exactly, but it has to be specifically boss's orders this time at least, because that Umbreon already has evolved. You can only use it once when you evolve. So I wouldn't mind seeing a second Umbreon V come into play, to be honest, just because there's so many choice targets here. The Illuminion, the Inteleon V.
Yeah.
Great targets for sure. If they have Gust here.
Like you said, though, it is risky to put one more single strike Pokemon into play because you do open up Drapion to be able to attack for a single energy card. But there's the escape rope, so this Urshifu will be able to at least damage this Umbreon. Does have 310 HP, so we'll need to find a way to maybe utilize one of these double gunner abilities to put some more damage counters on it. And there it is, the powerful late game supporter card, Roxanne, coming into play. Both players shuffling their hands up. Jacob will get 6 cards, Ryan will get 2, and unlike most decks, Ryan is not playing B-Barrel in the deck to draw more cards, so we'll be forced to find some crucial pieces here off of these 2 cards, especially if he wants to attack with the Umbreon this turn.
Exactly, exactly. If there's any card at all that could bring Jacob back into this game, it was that Roxanne at this exact moment. Right now, there is an Umbreon in the active with a double turbo energy. They would have to find a darkness energy or potentially a single strike energy to attack with this Umbreon. Otherwise, you're retreating, which means you lose that energy on the Umbreon. You're susceptible again to another escape rope potentially. That's a way out here. So very, very big Roxanne.
Yeah, really interesting you brought that up, the single strike energy. It's not something we see a lot in these Arceus decks, especially with Duraludon. What math do you think that really helps out with to hit 240 damage?
It's actually beautiful if you think about it. Duraludon does 220 damage plus the single strike energy, 240, plus the choice belt, that's 270, plus the Howlucha, that's 280. That's a lot of modifiers.
That's a magic number to my head. That 280 feels like every set we have a magic number, and it feels like because V-Stars are still running through the format, they're so popular, 280 feels like the magic number. So it works out perfectly, like you said, with single strike energy. And there it is, Gale Thrust, 150 damage on this Umbreon. What is the top deck for turn? It looks like it's another Umbreon. So has an energy card, can potentially attach this to the Umbreon, and that is the choice. We'll pivot out, and there it is, G-Max Pulverization, 220 damage, and action is on Jacob. You've got to take care of this Duraludon. It's going to take you at minimum 2 to 3 turns to take care of it. How are you going to get there? How are you going to be able to put these pieces together? Melanie, a couple of water energies. I think there might still be a water energy in the discard pile. If not, this Melanie can't even be played, but it looks like there is an energy there. So here we go, Melanie accelerating the energy to this Inteleon. 3 cards, needs to find Inteleon VMAX. Do we see it here? Already played Irida for turn, and no, there's a miss. You can't even attack with this baby Inteleon. It only does 120 damage. It's not nearly enough to set your math up.
Yeah, you might have to retreat to maybe your the Remoraid here. That's all you can give, I think.
Well, you've got
or the Luminion.
Yeah, so the nest ball was there. That would have actually been a really cool play. If the nest ball was found before the Melanie, you could nest ball for the Drapion, Melanie onto it, then attach to it, and then deal 190 damage to this active. But
which definitely matters. Any damage at 190 plus a 140 on the Inteleon. That's actually pretty good math there.
Yeah, sometimes people, I feel like, tunnel into the fact that Drapion's in the deck mainly, and I feel like only for this Fusion Strike deck, the Mew VMAX deck, but it does still have an ability that allows you to attack for the other strike styles that exist in the game. And Looks like we are just going to see the 20 damage, rather retreating into this, or we're seeing the, what was that? I believe, oh, the painful
Alakazam.
spoons move the
Yes.
damage over to the active, and we are actually going to see
Ooh.
this attack. I didn't think I would be seeing an Inteleon attack today.
I wasn't
but,
ready. I wasn't ready. I'm not even
here
sure
it
what this
goes.
attack does,
We
but
are
there
going to see
is...
Aqua Bullet. So Aqua Bullet does 120 and then 20 snipe to a benched Pokemon. So it does set this Umbreon up for a little bit of math. There is now 140 on there, so I mean, the potential still exists. Like we said, the math actually may be lining up for Drapion to steal the show there. It's perfect math knocked Duraludon out, but it's still a lot to ask for next turn.
Exactly. It has to be Drapion here, I think. Not even Inteleon VMAX can get this knockout. Not right away anyway, but Inteleon VMAX in the active, though, that could still be good, right? That's something that can take a hit. As we just go back here into Jacob, I don't see a Melanie in hand, right? So that means they possibly don't have an attack here.
So there's the Drapion for turn. Does now have access to that. Let's see how many water energy are gone. There's 3 water energy in the discard pile. Right now, there's still a few pieces missing. So this active Duraludon has 330 HP. There is still 109 to get through, but does at least have Iridas, so we will finally see this Inteleon VMAX come into play. Can also grab a trainer card out of the deck, or an item card rather. Also eyeing up Octillery. I like grabbing Octillery here. It's a smart grab, but the problem is there were 2 of those Rapid Strike Energy prized. Of course, you can't use them onto Duraludon, but assuming you can damage this Umbreon, you'd like to have that piece to apply some pressure.
Exactly. Definitely great. That is probably the most important grab there, the Octillery. Something I was eyeing out is potentially if they had something like an Echoing Horn, you can force back another single strike Pokemon in play, and then you can attack with the Drapion with 1 attachment. But unfortunately, they don't have the Echoing Horn there. A couple of Urshifu decks do play it because, again, putting more targets in play is always good. But right now, that's all we have. Looks like it's going to be an energy retrieval and the Octillery. Octillery should be able to grab here the Inteleon VMAX, which should be able to take a hit. So we could potentially see 1 more turn, unless, of course, we see a gust here on Ryan's side of the field.
Yeah, it's so weird. It just makes me wonder, if sacrificing that Inteleon, you put 3 energy onto at that point, how worth it was it? Because at this point, assuming you could attack with the Inteleon this turn, it's really on your opponent afterwards to find a way to power up this benched Umbreon. You can attack twice with this Inteleon, but now, because your opponent only has a single prize card left, you've got to put this up into the active and hope somehow that you can buy enough time to set math up somewhere on your opponent's board. You can at least put damage on, painful spoons, move it to the active spot, but is that going to be enough? The math right now slowly adding up 160 damage, but you're 10 damage short next turn with painful spoons.
Not only that, you have to think here, Jacob actually still has to take 4 prizes. He has to take down, and right now there's only 2 VMAXs in play. That's a tall order. That's a tall order here. He's essentially has...
And that's it. Luminion can grab boss's orders out of the deck, can bring up this any Pokemon on the bench,